A language that is not official in its own country, controls that entire country anyway. 80 to 90% of Senegal speaks Wolof, but French is the official language. Think about what that actually means. A colonial language is official, but the language of the people won anyway. This is the story of how one people, standing at the very edge of Africa, quietly dominated everything around them without ever needing to conquer it by force. They are the Wolof. And almost nobody outside Africa knows their name. But they should. The Wolof are the dominant ethnic group of Senegal, the westernmost country on the African mainland. They number around 8 to 10 million people. But that number tells you almost nothing about their actual influence. Here is what tells you everything. Senegal has over 20 distinct ethnic groups. The Fulani are there, the Sera, the Mandinka, the Diola. None of them are Wolof, and yet almost all of them speak Wolof fluently. Not because they were forced to, because Wolof became the language of commerce, of the street, of real life. French, the official language, is what you use in government offices and university classrooms. Wolof is what Senegal actually speaks. The Wolof are also defined by one of the most distinctive aesthetic cultures in the world. The Grand Boubou, the flowing embroidered robe worn by both men and women, is one of the most recognizable garments in all of Africa. But in Wolof culture, it is not just clothing, it is a statement. The Wolof have a concept called Djomm, roughly translated as dignity, self-respect, and the social obligation to present yourself to the world with care and pride. To dress carelessly is not just unfashionable in Wolof culture, it is a moral failure. When you understand Djomm, you understand the Wolof. Everything they have built, their empire, their religion, their music, their commercial networks, is an expression of this same principle. Show up fully, or do not show up at all. Most African empires were destroyed by outside forces. The Moroccan army that shattered Songhai, the British that dismantled the Sokoto Caliphate. But the Jolof Empire, the greatest Wolof state in history, was not defeated by anyone. It fell apart because of a harbor. The Jolof Empire was founded in the 13th or 14th century, and at its peak, controlled most of what is now northern and central Senegal. It was structured as a confederacy of 5 vassal kingdoms: Jolof, Kayor, Beol, Walo, and Sine Saloum. Each governed by its own king, but paying tribute to the supreme ruler, the Bourba Jolof. This was not held together by military force. It was held together by economic logic. The inland empire controlled the trade routes between the Saharan north and the Atlantic coast. Everyone needed the Bourba Jolof as the middleman. Salt, gold, enslaved people, cloth, all of it passed through Jolof territory, and then the Portuguese arrived on the coast. When European ships began trading directly on the Atlantic coast in the 1440s, the coastal kingdoms suddenly realized something dangerous. They did not need the inland empire anymore. They could bypass the Bourba Jolof entirely and trade directly with the Europeans at the shore. The economic logic that had held 5 kingdoms together for 2 centuries dissolved in a generation. In 1549, the kingdom of Kayor broke from the Jolof Empire, killing the Bourba Jolof in battle and declaring independence. The others followed. The empire collapsed not because it was conquered, but because it was made irrelevant. The Jolof Empire was killed by geography, and the lesson it teaches is one every empire should fear. The moment you are no longer necessary, you are finished. When Portuguese ships first made contact with the Wolof in 1444, they did not encounter a people who were easily dominated. The Wolof kingdoms were organized, sophisticated, and experienced in long-distance trade. They negotiated. For decades, the relationship between the Wolof kingdoms and European traders was one of exchange, not subjugation. The Wolof traded enslaved people from rival territories, gold and hides for horses, weapons, and European manufactured goods. They were participants in the Atlantic system, not simply its victims. But participation in the slave trade had a price. The demand for enslaved people from European traders incentivized the Wolof kingdoms to raid each other and their neighbors constantly, destabilizing the entire region, fueling the very wars that had fractured the Jolof Empire, and ultimately leading to Wolof people themselves being enslaved and transported across the Atlantic. The Wolof who ended up in the Americas, particularly in Louisiana and the Caribbean, became known for being resistant, proud, and difficult to break. There are records of Wolof enslaved people who maintained their language, their Islamic faith, and their cultural identity under conditions designed to destroy all three. Djomm, even in chains. In the entire history of West African resistance to colonialism, there is no story quite like this one. Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba was born in 1853 into a Wolof family of Islamic scholars. He was not a warrior. He did not raise an army. He did not fight the French with weapons. He prayed, he wrote poetry, he taught, and the French were terrified of him. By the 1890s, Bamba had built a following so large among the Wolof and neighboring peoples that French colonial authorities decided he was too dangerous to leave free. In 1895, they arrested him and exiled him to Gabon, nearly 3,000 kilometers away. His following doubled. They brought him back, watched him for a few years, decided he was still too influential, and exiled him again, this time to Mauritania, in 1903. His following doubled again. The French eventually realized that exile was making him more powerful, not less. They released him and allowed him to return to Senegal, where he founded the city of Touba, the spiritual capital of the Mourid Brotherhood he had established. Bamba's teaching was radical in its simplicity. He said that for ordinary people, farmers, traders, the poor, the path to God was not through classical Islamic scholarship that required years of Arabic study. It was through work, discipline, and devotion to your sheikh. Do your work as an act of worship. That is enough. This message spread among the Wolof like nothing before it. Today, the Murid Brotherhood has millions of followers across Senegal and worldwide. The Grand Magal of Touba, the annual pilgrimage to Bamba City, draws 4 to 5 million people every year, making it one of the largest religious gatherings on earth. A gathering most people outside West Africa have never heard of. And the Murid commercial networks, globe-spanning webs of Wolof traders operating in Dakar, New York, Milan, Tokyo, and everywhere in between, are a direct extension of Bamba's teaching. Work is worship. Trade is devotion. The network is the brotherhood. The man France tried to silence built one of the most influential religious and commercial movements in the modern world. France established its first permanent settlement in Senegal in 1659, founding Saint-Louis at the mouth of the Senegal River. Over the next 2 centuries, French control expanded slowly inland, meeting fierce resistance at every step. The greatest Wolof resistance came from Lat Dior, the warrior king of Cayor, who fought the French for over 2 decades. His final battle was not over territory or tribute, it was over a railway. The French wanted to build a railway from Dakar to Saint-Louis that would run through the heart of Cayor, opening the peanut-growing interior to French commercial exploitation. Lat Dior understood exactly what it meant. A railway was not infrastructure. It was the end of Cayor's independence. He fought. He was outgunned. He died in battle in 1886. Today, he is one of the most celebrated figures in Senegalese national memory. The man who saw what was coming before anyone else and refused to accept it. Senegal's independence in 1960 was led by Léopold Sédar Senghor, a poet, philosopher, and the intellectual architect of negritude, the movement that asserted the value of African culture and identity in the face of European colonialism. Senegal has never had a military coup. In a continent where coups have been the norm, that is extraordinary. The political culture of Dakar, sophisticated, literate, deeply connected to both French and Islamic intellectual traditions, produced something rare in post-colonial Africa: A democracy that actually worked. Today, Senegal is one of the most stable and culturally dynamic countries in Africa, and the Wolof are at the center of everything. Lamb, traditional Wolof wrestling, is the national sport, and it is unlike any sport you have seen. Before two wrestlers ever touch each other, they spend up to an hour in spiritual preparation, applying protective amulets given by their marabout, performing elaborate dances, wearing ceremonial dress. The physical fight is almost secondary to what precedes it. The greatest wrestlers are national celebrities who earn more than footballers and attract crowds of 50,000 people. Lamb is not just a sport, it is Wolof philosophy made physical. The combination of spiritual preparation, personal dignity, and competitive excellence that runs through everything this people do. Mbalax, the Wolof-rooted musical genre that fuses traditional Sabar drum rhythms with jazz, Latin music, and soul, is the sound of Senegal to the world. Its greatest voice is Youssou N'Dour, a Wolof musician from Dakar who is arguably the most internationally celebrated African musician alive today. When Peter Gabriel heard N'Dour in the 1980s, he said it was unlike anything he had ever heard. He was right. Mbalax is percussion-driven, polyrhythmic, and ecstatic in a way that no Western genre quite captures. It is the talking drum tradition, updated for the 21st century. Dakar Fashion Week has become one of the most important fashion events in Africa. Because when you come from a culture that treats how you dress as a moral question, fashion is never just fashion. It is identity. It is politics. It is Djomm. And the Mourid commercial networks, those globe-spanning webs of Wolof traders that Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba set in motion over a century ago, continue to operate from Dakar to New York to Milan to Tokyo, sending remittances home that help fund the growth of Touba, now one of the fastest growing cities in Senegal. 8 to 10 million people. A language that conquered a country without becoming its official language. A mystic who turned exile into an empire of faith. A wrestler who prays for an hour before he fights. The Wolof did not build the largest empire in West Africa. They did not produce the most famous kingdom. They were not the most written about people in the colonial records. And yet, Senegal speaks their language. Their wrestlers are national heroes. Their musicians are known on every continent. Their traders operate in every major city in the world. Their fashion is influencing global design. They did not conquer the world by force. They did it through language, through cloth, through music, through faith, through Djomm. Subscribe to TheKognos. And if you haven't watched our full West African series yet, the Fulani, the Hausa, the Tuareg, and the Yoruba are all waiting for you. And drop a comment below. Had you heard of the Wolof before this video?